Hey everyone, hope you're doing well today. In this video, let's go ahead and look at solving equations with integers and rational numbers. Now, for the first set of problems, we're going to be solving some one-step equations. We're going to make sure we are showing the properties of equality, or what we're doing to both sides of the equation, and as well as the identity properties, where we multiply things by 1, they stay the same, and when we add 0 to things, they also stay the same. So let's go right to it. In this first one, the first thing we're going to do is subtract 7 from both sides. That would be showing the property of equality, the subtraction property of equality. And when we're adding and subtracting, that's going to help us get 0. So this is going to say x plus 0, because negative 7 and positive 7 are opposites, and they make 0. 12 minus 7 is going to be 5. And finally, we can drop that 0. That's using the identity property of addition to say that x is equal to 5. Cool, that's number 1. Let's take a look at number 2. In number 2, it says y minus 3 is equal to 5. So we're going to use the addition property of equality and add 3 to both sides of the equation, just like this. When we do so, that negative 3 and positive 3 are going to cancel out, and they're going to make 0 because they're opposites. We have y plus 0, and 5 plus 3 on the other side is going to equal 8. Okay. Finally, we can go ahead and drop that 0 just because of the identity property of addition. So we can finally say that y is equal to 8. Moving on to number 3. For this one, we have 6k, or rather 6 times k is equal to 42. The property of equality we're going to use is the division property of equality. 6 divided by 6 is equal to 1, so we have 1 times k, or 1k, is equal to, and 42 divided by 6 is equal to 7. We don't have to write that 1 in the final part of the answer just because the identity property of multiplication, saying anything times 1 is still the same. So we can just write k is equal to 7. For number 4, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this equation. So I have a little bit more space, but it says e divided by 5 is equal to 9. And so the inverse operation is going to be, let's go ahead and multiply both sides by 5, the multiplication property of equality. On the left side, we're going to see these 5s cross cancel to make 1s. So what we're going to have here is 1e, or 1 times e, is equal to, and on the right side, 9 times 5 is 45. And just like in the last one, we can drop that 1 by the identity property of multiplication and say that e is equal to 45. Cool. Moving on to number 5, that's right up here. We're going to go ahead and use the subtraction property of equality and take away 9 from both sides of the equation. On the left side, 9 minus 9 is going to equal 0, so we can write x plus 0 is equal to. And on the right side, we really have this negative 7 take away 9. But remember that negative 7 take away 9 is the same thing as negative 7 plus negative 9, right? If we just add the opposite or keep change flip, and that's going to be equal to negative 16, since negative plus a negative is just going to be more negative. So we can say this is equal to negative 16, and by the identity property of addition, we can drop the 0 and say x is equal to negative 16. Moving on to number 6, we have y minus 14 is equal to negative 23. I'm going to use the addition property of equality and add 14 to both sides of the equation. On the left side, this negative 14 plus 14 are going to cancel each other out, so we're going to have y plus this 0. And on the right side, we're going to have this negative 23. I'll write it out from left to right. Some people prefer that. Negative 23 plus 14. And since they're opposite signs, we're really just going to subtract 23 minus 14, and that is going to be 9. And so it's going to be a negative 9, since negative 23 has a greater absolute value. And so finally, we can go ahead and drop that 0 by the identity property of addition and say y equals negative 9. Cool. Moving on to the next problem here, number 7, we have negative 4 multiplied by k is equal to negative 32. We need a coefficient of positive 1, so we're going to use the division property of equality and divide both sides by negative 4. Notice what's going to happen in negative 4 divided by negative 4 is going to be a 1, because anything divided by itself is 1. And so we're going to get 1 times k, or 1k, is equal to, and on the right side, this negative 32 divided by negative 4 is going to equal a positive 8. And then finally, we can drop that 1 and just say that k is equal to 8. Alrighty. Moving on to number 8. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this one just to get a little bit more space. We have e divided by 7 is equal to negative 9. And so the property of equality we're going to use is we're going to use the multiplication property of equality and multiply both sides by 7. On the left side, these 7s are going to cross cancel out to make 1s. If we do that, we're going to get 1e or 1 times e. And on the right side, negative 9 times 7 is negative 63. And then finally, using the identity property of multiplication, dropping that 1, we can say that e is equal to negative 63. All right. Number 9, let's try these with some fractions now. On both sides, we're going to use the subtraction property of equality and take away 3/4. Okay, writing that on both sides. On the left side, 3/4 take away 3/4 is going to be 0, so we're going to write x plus 0. And on the right side, I'm going to go ahead and write this from left to right. This is 7/4 take away 3/4. 7/4 take away 3/4. We like common denominators. We're going to get 4/4. 4/4 is 1 whole, so we're going to say x plus 0 is equal to 1. And using the identity property of addition, we can drop the 0 and say that x is equal to 1 whole. Okay. Number 10, we're going to use the addition property of equality and add 4/9 on the left side and add 4/9 on the right side. Okay, when we go ahead and do that on both sides, we're going to get 0, so we're going to get y plus 0 from that negative 4/9 and positive 4/9. And on the right side, we have this 11/9 adding on to the 4/9. They have common denominators, so we can add 11 plus 4 to get 15/9. And it looks like they have not common denominators, but they have a common factor, right? GCF, you can divide them both by 3, and that's going to be 5/3. And as a mixed number, that's going to be 1 and 2/3. Okay, so I'm going to write 1 and 2/3. And so using the identity property of addition, we can drop that 0 and say y is equal to 1 and 2/3. Just like that. For number 11, let's go ahead and check this one out. Just for a little bit more space, I'm going to rewrite this one. 3/4 times k is equal to 9. And so what we're going to do here is, because we see multiplication, we're going to use a division property of equality and divide both sides by 3/4. Now on the left side, 3/4 divided by 3/4 is just going to be 1. So we're going to be left with 1k, or 1 times k. And on the right side, what we have to do is take this 9, which is 9 over 1, and we're going to divide it by that 3/4. Now keep in mind, when we use division, we can rewrite it as 9 over 1 times 4 over 3. If we keep, change, and flip, the 3 and the 9 here happen to cross cancel. We can write that as a 3 and a 1. And on top, we're going to get 12. On bottom, we're going to get 1. This is just 12 wholes. So 1k is equal to 12. And so we have k is equal to 12. We use the identity property when we drop the 1. For number 12, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this for more space. We have e divided by 5 is equal to 9 over 10. The inverse of dividing by 5 is going to be multiplying by 5. So we're going to use the multiplication property of equality and multiply both sides by 5. On the left side, these 5s are going to cross cancel to make 1s. So we're going to have a coefficient of 1 and say we have 1 times e, or 1e. And on the right side, this 5 and this 10 can cross cancel nicely to 2 and 1. And so what we're going to have here is this 9 over 2 multiplied by 1 over 1. That's going to be 9 over 2. I'm just going to write it on the side for a moment. And 2 goes into 9 4 times with 1 left over, so it's 4.5. So 1e is equal to 4.5. And using the identity property of multiplication, we could drop the 1 and say e is equal to 4.5. Okay. For number 13, let's see what we got here. It looks like we are going to subtract 2/5 from both sides of the equation. That's a subtraction property of equality. If we subtract 2/5 from both sides, we're going to get x plus, and we're going to get 0 on the left side. They cancel out. And on the right side, let's be careful here. We have negative 9/5 take away 2/5. And if we are subtracting, remember, we can rewrite this if we keep, change, flip. This is the same thing as negative 9 over 5 plus a negative 2 over 5. And negative 9 plus negative 2 is negative 11. So it's negative 11 over 5. And 5 fits into 11 2 times, so it's negative 2 and 1/5. That'll be our fraction, negative 2 and 1/5. And using the identity property of addition, drop that 0 and say x is equal to negative 2 and 1/5. There we go. Cool. For number 14, what we're going to do is we are going to add 13/4 on the left side and do the same thing on the right side using the addition property of equality. And on the left side, that negative 13/4 and positive 13/4 are going to make 0. So we're going to get y plus 0 is equal to. And on the right side, we have this negative 15/4. So I'm going to give the negative to the top as usual. plus 13 over 4. It's nice we have common denominators. Negative 15 plus 13 is going to be negative 2. So we're going to get negative 2 over 4. And dividing them by their GCF of 2, if we divide by 2, we're going to get negative 1/2, and you can write that negative sign back in the middle. So we're going to get negative 1/2 as our final answer. And using the identity property of addition, drop that 0 and say y is equal to negative 1/2. Alrighty, moving on to number 15. I'm going to rewrite this one for more space. Negative 1/4 times k is equal to 3.5. Now to solve this, what we're going to do is use the division property of equality and divide both sides by the same thing, which is dividing both sides by negative 1/4. Now dividing anything by itself will cancel out to make 1, so we're left with 1 times k, or just 1k. And on the right side, we have a little bit of work to do here, but 3.5, 3 times 2 is 6 plus 1 is 7, so this is 7 over 2 divided by this negative 1/4. Now remember, with dividing fractions, we can say this is 7 over 2 multiplied by, I'm going to give the negative to the 1, and it's going to flip to the bottom, and we'll put the 4 on top. So we keep change flipped. And so this is going to get us the same answer if we were to just divide. And so we can cross cancel. We can get the 1 and 2. 7 times 2 is 14. 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. And 14 divided by negative 1 is negative 14. So we have 1k is equal to negative 14, which means that k is equal to negative 14. We can drop that 1 by the identity property of multiplication. Moving on down to number 16, I'm going to rewrite this one. I'm going to write e over 6, or e divided by 6, is equal to negative 2 2/5. And the property that we're going to use, the property of equality, is going to be multiplication. Let's multiply both sides by 6. That will help cross cancel out these 6's. These 6's will become 1. So on the left side, we're just going to have 1 times e, or 1e. And on the right side, we have this negative 2 2/5. So 2 times 5 is 10. 10 plus 2 is 12. So we have negative 12 over 5, give the negative to the top, multiplied by 6 over 1. Unfortunately, we can't cross cancel, but 12 times 6 is 72. So negative 12 times 6 is going to be negative 72. And 5 times 1 is going to be 5. And it turns out that 5 times 14 is equal to 70. And so we have 2 left over. So we're going to get negative 14 2/5 here, and dropping that 1, we can say e is equal to negative 14 2/5. All right, moving on. Number 17, we got a new set of directions here. We're going to solve the following two-step equations. We're going to combine like terms first. Then we're going to show the properties of equality again and the identity property. So I'm going to run through these just similarly, just like we just did. First, though, we're going to combine these on the left side. So 4x plus 2x is 6x. 6x equals 48. Then the property of equality, we're going to divide by 6, divide by 6. These cancel out to make 1s. So on the left side, we're going to have 1 times x, or just 1x. And then on the right side, 48 divided by 6 is going to be 8. And so drop that 1 and write x is equal to 8. For 18, we're going to combine the like terms on the right. This 6 plus 9 is 15. So we'll say 3x is equal to 15. And we're going to go ahead and use the division property of equality. Divide both sides by 3. This 3 divided by 3 is going to be a 1, which leaves us with a coefficient of 1x, or 1 times x. And on the right side, 15 divided by 3 is 5. And so x is equal to 5. For 19, let's go ahead and combine these like terms on the left side of negative 4x plus 7x. Combined will make a positive 3x. So 3x is equal to 51. Then we can go ahead and divide both sides by positive 3. These 3's will cross cancel, or 3 divided by 3 is really 1. So we have this 1 as a coefficient, or 1 times x is equal to, and on the right side, 51 divided by 3 is 17. And so x is equal to 17. Alrighty, moving on to number 20, which is right over here at the top. We're going to combine these like terms. This 5x plus 6x is going to be 11x. So we have 11x is equal to negative 88. We're going to go ahead and use the division property of equality and divide both sides by 11. On the left side, these 11s are going to cancel out to make 1. So we get a coefficient of 1 for the x. So we have 1 times x, or 1x. And on the right side, negative 88 divided by 11 is negative 8. Dropping the 1, we can say x is equal to negative 8. For 21, let's go ahead and combine the like terms on the left side. 2x take away 7x can combine to make a negative 5x. That's on the left side. And on the right side, we still have this negative 45. Then using the division property of equality, we can divide both sides by negative 5. These negative 5s are going to cancel out with each other. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 is just 1. So we have 1 times x. 1x is equal to. And on the right side, negative 45 divided by negative 5. That's the opposite of the opposite, which is just a normal 9. So we can say x is equal to 9. Moving on to 22, we're going to go ahead and combine these constants on the right side. So we'll leave the 9x alone on the left, and then this negative 52 plus 7 is going to be negative 45. And dividing both sides by 9 using the division property of equality, 9 divided by 9 is going to be 1 on the left. So we're going to get positive 1 times x, or 1x. And on the right side, 45 divided by 9 is 5, but it's the opposite of that, so it's negative 5. And using the identity property of multiplication, drop that 1, x equals negative 5. Let's check out this next section. So for these ones here, we're going to solve the following equations. We're going to make sure we use the distributive property first, then show the properties of equality and the identity properties. Okay, so first things first, let's use the distributive property. So we're going to say 3 times 2x, and that's going to be 6x. And then we're going to say 3 times the 6 here, that's going to be 18. So we're going to say plus 18 is equal to 36. Using properties of equality, for these ones you always use addition or subtraction before we use multiplication, because we're solving equations here. So we're going to get 6x plus, and we're going to end up with the 0 here. And 36 minus 18 is 18. Next line, we will drop the 0 and say 6x is equal to 18 by the identity property. Then we'll use the division property of equality and divide both sides by 6. 6 divided by 6 will be 1. So we're left with a coefficient of 1 times x, or 1x. And 18 divided by 6 is 3. And finally, drop that 1 in front using the identity property of multiplication, and we get x is equal to 3. All right, let's check out 24. For 24, the first thing we're going to do is distribute the 4. 4 times 1x. Remember, there's invisible 1 in front, so 4 times 1 is 4, so we have 4x. And then 4 times this negative 3 is going to be negative 12, so we're going to write minus 12 is equal to 20. So there's the distributive property. Then we're going to go ahead and use the addition property of equality and add 12 to both sides. On the left, we'll have 4x plus, and we're going to have to write the 0 here because that's what negative 12 and positive 12 combine to make. 20 plus 12 is 32. And then we're going to drop the 0 using the identity property. Then we will divide both sides by 4 using the division property of equality. 4 divided by 4 is going to be 1. So we'll be left with this 1 times x, or 1x equals, and 32 divided by 4 is 8. And dropping the 1 in front using the identity property again, this time for multiplication, we get x is equal to 8. For 25, let's go ahead and distribute. This 5 times 2 is going to get us 10x. And then this 5 times negative 7 is going to be negative 35 minus 35 is equal to 45. Using the addition property of equality, let's add 35 and add 35. If we go ahead and do that, we're going to have 10x plus 0 is equal to 80. We can drop the 0 by the identity property of addition. Then we can go ahead and divide both sides by 10 using the division property of equality. These 10s are going to cross cancel to make 1, so we're going to have 1x. And on the right side, 80 divided by 10 is going to be 8. And by the identity property of multiplication, drop that 1 and say x is equal to 8. On to 26, let's distribute first. 2 times 3x, that's going to be 6x. And then 2 times this 8 is going to be 16. So plus 16 is equal to 24. So we distributed. Now let's use the properties of equality. First, subtract. Minus 16 minus 16. We're going to get 6x plus 0. And on the right side, 24 minus 16 is going to equal 8. Dropping the 0, we're going to say 6x is equal to 8. Then we can use the division property of equality and divide both sides by 6. These 6's will cross cancel to make 1, so we're going to get 1 times x, or 1x. And on the right side, we have 8 divided by 6, right? So there's a few ways you can do this, but I'm just going to write it out like this time. It's really 8 divided by 6. 6 goes into 8 once. 1 times 6 is 6, and the remainder is 2. So it goes in one time with 2 6 left over, which is really 1 1/3 if you simplify and divide top and bottom by their GCF of 2. So divided by 2, divided by 2. So this is going to end up being 1 1/3. And so we can say x is equal to 1 1/3. All right, let's check out the last few here. So on to 27. First thing is going to be distributing this 4 to this negative 2x. So on the left side, this negative 56, we're just going to leave alone. On the right side, 4 times negative 2x is going to be negative 8x. And distributing this 4 to this negative 5 is going to be negative 20. So go ahead and write minus 20. Using the addition property of equality, we're going to add 20 to both sides of the equation. Adding 20 to both sides, we're going to get negative 36 is equal to negative 8x plus 0. And we can go ahead and drop that 0 and just say we have negative 36 is equal to negative 8x. Then we can divide both sides by negative 8 using the division property of equality. These negative 8s are going to divide and make 1, and they cancel each other out. And we can write the coefficient here is going to be 1 times x, or 1x. And on the left side, we have this negative 36 divided by negative 8, which is really just 36 divided by 8. 8 will fit into 36 4 times. 4 times 8 is 32 with a remainder of 4. So this goes in 4 whole times with 4/8 left over. And if you divide top and bottom by their GCF of 4, you're going to get 4 1/2. So divided by 4, divided by 4. So a negative divided by negative is a positive. So we're going to say that this is going to be positive 4 1/2. And it looks like this should have been this over here. And we can turn this around and drop the 1 and say x is equal to 4 1/2. There's our final answer. For 28, let's go ahead and distribute first. This negative 3 multiplied by 2x, that's going to give us 24 on the left is equal to negative 6x. And then this negative 3 multiplied by this positive 3 is going to be negative 9, so we'll write minus 9. Then we'll go ahead and add 9 to both sides of the equation using the addition property of equality. On the left side, we're going to get 33 is equal to negative 6x plus 0. Then we can go ahead and drop the 0 by the identity property of addition. Negative 33 is equal to negative 6x. Then we can go ahead and divide both sides by negative 6 using the division property of equality. And this negative 6 divided by negative 6 just makes 1. So we're going to get a coefficient of 1, which is what we want. So we have 1x. And on the left side, we have 33 divided by 6. So I'm going to go ahead and show that. 33 divided by 6. 6 fits into 33 5 times. That's going to be 30 with 3 left over. So this is 5 3 6, which is equivalent to 5 1/2, assuming we are dividing both top and bottom by their GCF of 3. So since positive 33 divided by negative 6 should be a negative value, this should be negative 5 1/2 as opposed to positive 5 1/2. So dropping that 1 from the identity property, we can write x is equal to negative 5 1/2. Alrighty, moving on to number 29. Second to last problem, let's distribute the 7 to both of these over here, right? So we have negative 28 is equal to positive 21x, and 7 times 3 is 21. And 7 times negative 4 is going to be negative 28. Then we're going to go ahead and add 28 to both sides of the equation using the addition property of equality. On the left side, we're actually going to end up with 0, and that's going to equal 21x plus 0. That 0 was planned on the right, but was kind of a coincidence on the left. Then using the identity property of addition, we can drop the 0 on the right side. Following, we're going to go ahead and divide both sides by 21 using the division property of equality. And 21 divided by 21 is going to get us the coefficient we're looking for. And so that's going to be a coefficient of 1, so we have 1x. And on the left side, 0 divided by 21 is just 0. So finally, drop that 1 by the identity property of multiplication and say x is equal to 0. Last problem for number 30, let's go ahead and distribute first. So we have this negative 5 times this 4, and I'm going to go ahead and just write that one by one here. So 30 is equal to, that's going to be negative 20x, and then this negative 5 multiplied by negative 3, that's going to be positive 15. Next, using the property of equality, let's take away 15 and take away 15 from both sides of the equation. On the left side, 30 minus 15 is going to be 15. and that's going to be equal to negative 20x plus 0. And then we're going to have 15 here is equal to negative 20x, dropping the 0 by the identity property of addition. Finally, we're going to divide both sides by negative 20 using the division property of equality. Negative 20 divided by negative 20 is going to be 1. And so we're going to have a coefficient of 1. So we're going to have 1x just over here on the right side. And on the left side, I'm just going to go ahead and write it. But we have this negative 15 over 20. I'm just sliding the negative into the middle because you can put it wherever. And we can divide top and bottom by the GCF of 5. And that's going to give us a negative 3/4. So that's going to be negative 3/4 because a positive divided by negative is a negative. And finally, we can say x is equal to negative 3/4. Done. All right, cool. So there you have 30 different practice problems that are dealing with equations. These ones have distributive property and using both properties of equality, or two properties of equality rather, and the identity properties. These ones over here use combining like terms, and then use properties of equality and the identity property. And these ones up here use one of the properties of equality and one of the identity properties. So as always, hope you found this helpful and keep up the great work. I'll see you in the next one.